Hello, my friend. On today's episode, I have a very special guest. First time on the podcast, it's Dustin Bogle. Dustin Bogle is the host of the Reinforce Your Gym podcast, also the author of a book called Reinforce Your Gym. He's a fantastic dude with so much wisdom, so much experience in the industry. We kind of walk through his approach to marketing. We talk specifically about paid and unpaid advertising. We talk about email marketing. We talk about all the tools he uses to help his gyms and gyms that he works with get results in generating more leads. So if you want some more leads in your gym, there's no better episode than this one. So keep on listening. Hello, fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. Before we jump into today's episode with our special guest, I have an announcement for you, which is on February 6th, we are hosting a virtual fireside chat, and you're invited. You get to listen in as Mark Fisher asks Stu Brower, who is the founder of the Gym Real Estate Company. He's going to ask Stu everything you wanted to know and some things you didn't even think to ask about opening up a gym that's profitable on day one. They're going to cover some really key topics like how to choose the best location and space for your gym. How much do you actually need to fund the opening of your gym? What are the pros and cons of different financing? They're going to cover a lot of the nitty gritty stuff that you're going to want to come to this call with pen and paper in hand. You're going to take a lot of notes. So if you want to join us for that fireside virtual chat on February 6th, click the link in the show notes. Come join us. It's free. Hope to see you there. Which brings me to today's episode. Very special guest, first time on the podcast. I want to welcome Dustin Bogle. Before I welcome you, Dustin, I just want to say a little bit about you, which is Dustin is a 6-time gym owner and a former professional wrestler, which we are going to talk about. He scaled his fitness empire by finding the sweet spot between marketing and sales and leadership. Now he helps gym owners like all of you create more impact and more income with his podcast and his best-selling book that share the same name, which is Reinforce Your Gym. Reinforce Your Gym. Go check it out. Welcome to the podcast, Dustin. How are you?
Thank you, Michael. Excited to be here. Been a listener for a while, actually. And, again, always good to create content that's going to add value to gym owners, man. So let's make some magic happen.
I'm so excited to have you here. What a treat. Let's start with a big picture question because you're a man that's done many things. I'm going to save the professional wrestling for later in the episode as a bonus. But let's start with gyms and marketing and lead generation. You're the king of lead generation. So we're just going to talk big picture. A lot of people are afraid of paid ads, afraid of doing any advertising at all. So you can just talk about what's your approach to lead generation using paid ads?
Yeah, great question. So, I have owned gyms since 2011, and I got to see what it's like in those heyday of Facebook when you're getting dollar leads and they're going straight to a checkout page and paying themselves with zero lead nurture or very little. So I know how it's changed, and it's only going to continue to change. And so I think a lot of owners just look at paid marketing with the wrong framework, which is they're either spoiled because they remember those days and they expect it to be happening today. And I'm a big believer in when expectations don't match reality, there's a gap between the two, and that's frustration. So if you expect 2012 results and it's not the reality of 2025, yes, you will be frustrated. So it starts with changing your expectation. And so I actually tell people you need to have lots of poles in the water, and Facebook is just one. If you just build your business off of just paid advertising, you are going to be in a really tough spot because it could get shut down. Your ads could get rejected. It could get throttled. There's a million things. So you got to have a lot. So I'm a big believer in, yes, paid advertising is powerful. I have a marketing agency, but you guys, we got to have organic marketing too. And so, I could kind of share a little bit of like a few polls from each one so owners can kind of see like my picture of like all the different angles that you could be bringing leads in. Michael, I'll let you kind of steer where we're going.
No, I think it's fantastic, Dustin. I think you're echoing a lot of frustrations I've heard from our Unicorn Signing members, our listeners on this podcast, right? Is that so many of them heard about all the Wild West of the 2011, 10, 11, 12, 13s about how easy it was to generate ads. And it's just not the case. And that does not mean it's not useful still. right? Does
Mhm.
not mean that you can't actually have some success doing it. Depends a lot on your market, depends a lot on your skill in developing ads, depends a lot on your lead gen. There's a lot of factors, but the reality is that this is a really useful tool to have in your marketing portfolio. Paid ads absolutely should be in that portfolio if you can afford it, and they are maybe not the instant win that they once were. So it does take a little patience and learning. So yeah, talk to me a little bit. How do you think about all the various poles in the water people should have?
Yeah, so I'll kind of touch on a few within paid marketing. So obviously Facebook ads, which again tends to get the most amount of leads, but I would drop the expectation of like they're probably going to be lower quality
Mm,
than a referral. A lot of times owners don't think about them in buckets of quality. They just look at them as leads. And I say 100 referrals is going to be way different than 100 Facebook opt-ins. And
yes.
so that's the first expectation to kind of like put on yourself. It's like, okay, I'm going to get some leads. I'm going to get a lot of local phone numbers and emails. This will grow my list, but I'm also going to be like dropping my expectation that maybe 10%, 15% will convert. Where on a referral, you might see 50 to 80%. So like getting that framework first of like, okay, I'm an entrepreneur. I have to take risk. All of us have a different risk appetite, but putting ads out on Facebook is going to be a risk. And if you can make it make sense in terms of your pricing of your offer, where you at least break even or hopefully profitable, then it's worth doing, right?
Yeah.
So again, getting away from low cost trials and just getting your skills up to just sell more expensive stuff.
I
That's going to be a big one.
I love that you're starting with this, Dustin, because I think the frustration I see from so many folks is they tried digital ads for a little while. They are getting leads that are just less warm because they're strangers and they're not used to talking to those folks. So they can maybe converting at 10 or 20% of those people into a first step, but they feel shitty about that because they're used to converting 60, 70, 80%. We're like, no, 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 that's good. That's actually what this looks like now. They need to reset their expectations for what those conversations look and sound like. And you're going to be getting a lot more no's, and you have to develop a tough skin to be able to show up every day and keep searching for those no's, which if you haven't done it, I get it, is upsetting at first, but keep on going. So I'm so glad you're starting there. What's next?
Yeah. So, like, to your point,
Yeah.
I like that you brought up their comfortability because I feel like when someone walks in or the referral, you feel king or queen of the castle because they came into my gym. I have home
Mhm.
court advantage. My conviction and my confidence is very high. Where when people, or, gym owners have to call, now they feel like a beggar, a pauper, like I'm bugging this person, like I'm in
Yep.
their space, I'm not in my home turf. And so that is a real thing. So, like the first part is, I like priming anyone who's going to do outbound, whether it's the gym owner or sales rep or manager. Read some testimonials before you do it because you got to get your conviction up. You got to like even do some push-ups and feel the feel good hormones. And like, again, I know it sounds like Wolf of Wall Street is like getting all amped up and, like snorting, pre-workout, but like you got to really bring that energy of you believe in this and it's going to change the person's life. So you get out of your head of like, I'm bothering them, rather I'm about to make a call that's going to transform their life. Right.
Yeah.
And so like a lot of people don't stop and think about that. If that person never got that phone call or that text from you, they might have continued on packing on weight and having a miserable life and having self-talk issues. But because you interjected and you created that fork in the road, you created a better path for them and you help them get healthy, get confidence, and change their life. So like when you think about it with a little bit bigger magnitude, you're like, oh my God, I'm dialing these numbers. I got to change these people's lives, right?
Yeah.
So that's all I want to say on that. I'll move on. But the next one's going to be email blasts. Now, the
Mm,
cost is way less than Facebook ads. They're like completely different end of the spectrum. But the reason I love email blasts, I do, love text, but you can only write a couple sentences and you can't really go long form. An email is like a long letter. We used to write letters and send them off, and you can really say what's on your mind. Emails allow you to do that. And I think it's really sad to me. I don't know what your guys' stats you see on your end, but I would venture to say 5 to 10% of gym owners are sending email blasts on a regular cadence. And the biggest thing they get in their head is, I don't know what to write. And my biggest antidote to that is just like write stories. People love stories. Every movie is a story. Every song we listen to is a story. Books are stories. Stories come out of us without any effort. But like trying to be looking smart or thinking about like, teaching them about metabolism, that's where we can get in our head. So I just say, tell your own story, something that happened to you this week. Could be funny, could be, you didn't feel like going to the gym, or tell a client story. And I bet you could come up with those, very easily. And then at the end, yes, on every two or three, do a call to action. But that's it. Just kind of treat it like life updates, telling them about what's going on in the gym. that people love to just be on the outside looking in. So you could just give them stories about the gym, right? But that's it. It's just like get into a cadence, start small, maybe one a week. And once you build that muscle, you can ramp it up and get to 2 or 3 times a week. But that, I mean, we're looking at anywhere from $20 to $150, depending on how many leads you have to send emails. So that would be my next paid strategy.
Yeah, that's a great one, Dustin. I couldn't agree more. I think I see that a lot when new members join our Unicorn Society group. Very few of them have a regular cadence for email marketing. And one of the first habits we try to develop with them is, well, one, segment their list so they can talk to different people with different messages, but also just put out a regular weekly email to everyone. And I think you're right that stories go such a long way. You have so many great stories of clients that you're working with all the time. And so I think, that we really talk about it as being, you want to educate, you want to entertain, right? And you want to inspire, right? Like those are like the three things your emails really want to do. And so whether you're telling a great testimonial story or teaching them something about how to overcome a pain point that your followers have, or you're just really entertaining them with something funny and silly, right?
Yeah.
Those are things that people want to click on and get in their inbox. And the more you can do that, the more you're top of mind for people when they are ready to take a next step. So yeah, I love that one. I think that's so important and right in line with what we talk about in this podcast all the time.
Yep. Well, I'll switch gears to organic.
Please.
So like these things, I say paid costs money, organic takes time. And so a lot of owners will just kind of get these like egos the longer they're in business. Like, I don't got time for that. And it's like, well, you did when you were opening the gym. And then somewhere along the line, you just somehow justified. But if you're in a struggling state or you're in a stagnant state where you're not growing, it's time to like get off your high horse and start doing these things that take time. So the first one I would say is social media content.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'd probably put most gym owners in the 5 to 10% camp of making actual content. Now, they'll happily post a client hit 100 sessions or drop 20 pounds. I don't know if I would put that under content. Like those are just like updates, gym going on, stuff going on in the gym. To your point, it'd be entertain me, educate me. I say the 30s, encourage me, right? And so like these are kind of cool to just shout out clients. I'd say it's more of a retention post that you're doing there. You're retaining that client, giving them recognition. I don't know if you're necessarily going to get a bunch of clients from that, but creating content, I could tell you my first gym that I grew to 60K without a whole lot of paid ads was, that's a month, was just content. Every month I showed up on YouTube. You can even go on my channel, dig back to 2013 and just see that I would give, 3 tips to get faster fat loss results, or 2 exercises you shouldn't waste your time on. And then I would sprinkle in stories, right? And so people actually really enjoyed my channel. But what I did do that I didn't want to do was I wanted to just be 5 Mile famous. I did not want to become nationwide famous because that doesn't really do a whole lot for my gym. I wanted to become 5 Mile famous. So I would post this in local Facebook groups where, my community was, where people lived. And I'd put hashtags of my city and the neighboring cities. And I just wanted those people to see my post and just follow my channel. I didn't care if someone in another state saw it. So, it's about then incentivizing your members to share it, your team to share it, posting it in multiple places. And I know it takes some time and energy, but guys, we got AI. You can ask it. I don't know what to do for content. Give me 100 ideas. You got a list, right? And it's just like, go after that list. Or again, I always like to think about a person when I'm writing an email, making content. Take a list of what all the questions your members ask you in the gym and just parlay that. Whatever your little spiel was you gave them in the gym that day, parlay that into a video or a written post and put it on social for the world, right?
Yeah.
So that'd be my first one.
Yeah, let me ask you this, Dustin. I think one of the biggest challenges I hear people have when it comes to organic social media and creating content that actually drives people to action is that they have a hard time creating content that really is engaging. By that I mean it starts a conversation or an interaction. To creating content that actually gets people to like, comment, share, subscribe, DM you, right? So you can talk a little bit more about how when you're doing the 3 E's, right, of content, like what really are you doing to make sure that content engages them and asks them to respond in some way?
Yeah. So notice in all 3 of those E's, they're after a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I changed in my content was I was getting a little too tactical because that's how my brain is. Like, I mean, I got all these books. I like reading. I like, getting information. But, what you see with social media accounts, usually the biggest accounts are entertaining based, right? Like that Mr. Beast, he's entertaining me. Am I really getting a business tactic? I mean, I can zoom out and pick apart some things, but he's not directly teaching me that. So entertaining creates a feeling, laughter, joy, happiness. I am going to share that to my friends and family. I am going to tag people. That will create that. The second is encouragement, right? Inspiration is another word used. I like that too. Those, the Rocky cut scenes, like us feeling inspired to push more, those get a ton of shares. Mindset videos, inspiring people, encouraging them. So like going at it from like, I want to create a feeling. And then education is more like curiosity, like, I didn't know that. That's interesting. And so like all of them are about a feeling. So the biggest filter I would say is look at your content and do you make people feel something? And a lot of times they don't. If you just write about yourself and you take a picture of your kids that are, they're going to the second grade, that's cool. And you can definitely do that. It's good to sprinkle in some personal and professional. But like when it's a professional post, how am I supposed to feel? Like Susan hit 100 sessions. That doesn't do anything for me, right? And I heard this line and I always like to repeat it. Everyone's favorite radio station's WIIFM. What's in it for me? And that's the one everyone tunes into. So if your posts don't speak to what's in it for me and they don't make me feel something, they will be discarded. They will be scrolled past and they won't be shared. So that's the biggest thing I could give someone, is just make people feel a way. Yeah. And then you'll get more shares.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think I would 100% plus one that, and I'll on top of it, it's also okay to ask for the engagement you want, to make sure your content actually says, comment below what this made you feel, right? Yep. Share this with 3 friends who you think need to hear this story today, right? Mm-hmm. So I think, make them feel something, and then it's okay to ask for the engagement you want. And all too often we don't. And so that's great. So talking about organic social media, and you pointed out, this doesn't cost a lot of money, but it takes time. It takes time to do this kind of work. Yes. Yeah. What else is in your portfolio here?
I'd give one more on this topic, and that is what I would call a double opt-in form. So this one kind of gets people, scratching their head like, this sounds like it's redundant. So an opt-in is, someone gave you their name, phone number, and email. So now what I do is I create like an application, and there's various versions of this. But then I send this to people who have already opted in, and it does require them to put in name, phone number, email again. But by them putting in that effort, they're expressing interest. So if I had 2,000 leads and 10 people fill out my form, those are the 10 that I'm going to spend my time and energy on, rather than trying to shotgun over 2,000 people. So it could be like new program application. Hey, we're a large group. We're launching a small group, but we can only take 10 people. Fill out this form to see if you're a good fit. And you can ask 5-10 questions that help you to qualify this person. Beta test. We're rolling out a new nutrition system. We need 5 people to beta test it. Fill out this form. And, you're not putting this out on your paid to your cold. You're bringing this into your warm, your existing database, but you're scraping off the most interested people and giving you more laser lead nurture versus, again, shotgunning all of your leads. So I call that the double opt-in. They've opted in already. Now you're asking them to opt in again, but that extra effort shows that they're very, very interested.
Yeah, I love this strategy, Dustin. I think it's a great one. So listeners, I hope you're taking notes. I think it's a great way to really dive into that list of people who have engaged and kind of raised their hand, but really get them to say, no, are you really interested right now? And get them to really raise both hands up in the air, I think is fantastic. And this actually, this might be a little bit tangent, but I think it's a worthy one, which is, this brings me to a challenge I think a lot of people have. The minute they start doing more marketing, they have more poles in the water. Oftentimes that means they're getting colder leads if they're doing paid ads. They're doing other things that just mean there's a bigger pool of leads coming their way. And often that means they're colder and colder. One of the challenges I see with that, one of the complaints they often have is like, I'm not getting qualified leads. They're not qualified. So can you just break down for me, like, how do you think about qualified leads? And because your strategy here is actually an example of qualifying leads, which I think is why it's a worthy tangent. So you say more about like, what is that process like for you? How do you think about qualifying leads?
Yeah, I am actually a believer that there's no bad leads, there's just bad marketing.
Yes.
And I think that your marketing is a result of those quote unquote bad leads or unqualified leads. So the answer is, and we do this with our agencies, just add more qualifiers, add more steps. Now your lead flow will go down, but your quality and your sales should go up. You should track and make sure that happens. If they're still not buying at the same rate as they were before, then we have to go back in and change things. I'm a big believer in data-driven decisions. Most gym owners, and I'll just say business owners in general, make emotional-based decisions. And the way you could tell is they don't bring you numbers. They use the word feel. I feel like the leads are no good. I feel like they're just ghosting me. I feel like the marketing's not working. I should just turn it off. I feel like they're unqualified. And it's just like, cool, what numbers do you got? And then just silence. They're like, it's just, I'm just operating off my gut, like no one's picking up the phone. So then you can dig into like, how many times did you reach out? Well, once. And it's like, okay, that's problem number one. Or how did you reach out to them? Well, I just shot them a text. So no call, no email. And then what time did you do it? Well, I'm free between sessions between 11 and 2. So that's when I did it. It's like, cool, these people have a 9 to 5. And so then I can dig into these details of like, the frequency, the channel, the time of day. And these are all details that matter, guys. And so
Yeah.
that usually leads to why they're an unqualified person. You're a not qualified salesperson. And so the
Yep.
owner has to upskill their lead nurture skills, or they need to, get help and have someone else do it. But, something needs to be done, because this
Yeah.
is going to slow
One
you
more,
down.
yeah, one more question on this topic. You mentioned that if you feel like you're getting unqualified people, you add a few more steps to qualify them. Can you just give like an example or two? What are the kinds of steps you would add to qualify folks?
So we're brick and mortar. An easy one would be, do you live in this city? Do you live in Dallas or nearby?
Yep.
And that way, I mean, these days they even have lead form options where if someone puts a negative answer you don't want, it just closes the form and it says, based on your last response, we're actually not a good fit for you. So if somebody
Mhm.
says, no, I don't live in Dallas and I have a Dallas gym, I want the form to close out. I don't want their lead info. I'm wasting their time, and ours, right? So like that would be one. The second, it's not necessarily a disqualifier, but it helps me tap into what they've spent on fitness. I like to ask, have you ever worked with a fitness trainer or coach before? And a yes
Mhm.
answer, I'm like, okay, this person spent money on their fitness problem. I like this. No, I just know I have to raise my value. They've never spent the kind of money I'm going to ask, and I have to really build my value before I present
Love it.
price. So those are a couple that are like our favorites.
Yeah, great examples. Yeah, I think those are super useful. And they're simple. They're things anyone can do if they want to make sure the leads they're getting are actually people they can sell to. And so that's fantastic. Yeah. What else? What else is a part of your poles in the water here?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer of something that I call the 7-figure marketing method, and for
Mhm.
time's sake, I'll kind of just brush over it really quick. But essentially, I've built gyms to that level, and so that's how I can speak on this. And had multiple gyms, so I know it can work in multiple areas as well. And SoCal, I mean, you guys know if you're in a competitive market in New York, I'd say it's pretty
Yeah,
competitive in SoCal. So if it can work there, probably going to be able to work in the Midwest or other states. So the way that the marketing calendar lays out is we have something we call a big mega launch, and we do these 4 times a year. So these would be big influxes of clients. You can call it a challenge, you can call it a program, but you need to get really hyped. Your teams need to be hyped. You need to put a lot of money into marketing, and you need to be ready to onboard a big influx of new clients. We like to do these 4 times a year, quarterly, when the market is also wanting to buy fitness. So definitely we're in
sure.
one right now, January.
Yep.
So that would be like your big, pushes. Then in between those, those 2 months between it, we call it a refill program. So we basically look at it this way: if we could just break even the amount of losses we have, we can refill that so that we have a net zero those months. That way, when the big launch ends, that all becomes net gain. Now, obviously, we'd be happier to get a net positive, but at least refilling your losses is going
Mm,
to put you in a place where you're ready to capitalize and have a big, growth, in that quarter. And so we tend to do a shorter term program. Might be a 21-day program, might be a 28-day program, where those big launches are going to be 6, 8, or 12-week programs that are going to create real massive change. But most owners can't do that every single month. It wears them and their team down. So you kind of got to get like a sprint, and then we got to go into like a recovery mode. So that's like the second leg. The third leg is, we call it the invisible funnel. This is just like your word of mouth. This is your website. This is your social media. This is your 5-star reviews, your referral rate. Like, you don't see it, but it exists, and it does influence people's decisions to buy from you. And so that's why we consider it like an invisible funnel. Like, and some people have a really good invisible funnel, and some people have a really poor one, and it hurts
yep.
the other two. But then the fourth one, which again, sadly is not used enough by gym owners, we call it the affiliate army. And so this
Mm,
is then doing programs to get your members to refer people to you. And so this could be in those mega launches, or it could be to a refill program, but just at least scheduling it quarterly with your members, and then dressing it up differently. Because if it's the same way every time, they'll kind of get, worn down by it.
yeah, of
So
course.
hey, if you refer, you're entered into a drawing to win a free month. If you refer now, you can win prizes. Like just we had bingo cards where to black out your card and get a free month, you had to refer a friend. So like you could spin it a lot of ways, but you have an army of salespeople, advocates. Most owners unfortunately feel uncomfortable asking them for their friends. But I say, hey, this is actually in service of the client, because the more friendly faces they have in the gym, the more they're going to stay there. And actually, you're now impacting their family and friends. And if you really say you want to help your community get healthy and fit, you need to do whatever it takes to get more people in there. So
Yeah,
those are
absolutely.
the 4 layers of that 7-figure marketing method.
Yeah, those are fantastic. Yeah, listeners, I hope you were taking notes. Go back and replay that. There's so many great ideas in there, Dustin. That's amazing.
Appreciate it.
I know we're going to be running out of time, but I mean, that's such a useful framework. That in of itself is worth the price of admission to today's podcast. I do have one quick question for you. I think we can cover this quickly because it's something I think you and I really agree on, and I want to just share that with the audience, which is too often gym owners who don't like doing sales and don't want to do sales themselves will often just kind of delegate sales to their trainers. And I think both of us have seen that not go well. The thing I always see, the pattern I see is that trainers like to train. The minute you ask them to do things off the floor like sales, which is a skill that people have to learn and develop, it often doesn't go well because they're not trained to do it well, and they didn't want to do it in the first place. And so instead, I'm a big fan of actually having dedicated salespeople who like to do sales, who are trained to do sales, and are good at sales, which is right in line with what you do. So because we agree so hard on this, I want to just have a moment of aggressive agreement together. So
Yeah.
say more about why that matters to you.
Well, to be honest, in the defense of the trainer, they often get bait and switch to do sales. And so
Yeah.
we heard about these bait and switch schemes with fitness. It's free 6 week. No, it's not. I tricked you. Well, you put on
Yes.
your job posting nothing about sales. You're going to come in and coach sessions and you're going to breathe life into our clients and bring the energy. And then you're like, oh, by the way, I really need someone to help me with lead nurture. And most of the time they feel uncomfortable saying no to you, the owner. So they'll say yes, or I call it pity hours. A lot of times a trainer will come to an owner and say, I want more hours. And so you throw them a
Yes.
bone. You're like, well, I don't got more coaching. You could do some lead nurture. All the wrong ways to hire a salesperson. And we get these Frankenstein roles where they're a coach and a salesperson. And then we're mad. And then we don't know how to correct them when they're not doing one part of the job wrong. And then they're doing one job excellent. Well, I just turn it back to you. Owner. It's your fault. You put them in this position.
Yes.
Wasn't in the job description. You asked them to do something that's not in their skill set. You probably gave them very little training, and
Yes.
now you're trying to be smart and double your payroll effectiveness. But it always bites you in the butt. So I've tried it, and I pay attention to this. What people, when they get a job, what tasks do they gravitate to and they hit as soon as their butt hits the seats, and what do
Yeah.
they neglect and push off to the end of the day? And that will tell you, do you have the right person in the seat? If the top 3 to 5 tasks that you need that role to be completed are not done in the early part of the day, I bet you don't have the right person in that role. You need to
Yeah.
think about, either helping them and coaching them or hiring someone new, because they're not excited. We're
100%.
excited to do our work, right? So, yeah.
100%. Yeah. And that's it. And I think I've also seen examples of people who are trainers and great salespeople, but those folks were often hired with the expectation they'd be doing sales from the beginning. And they were hired
Right.
because they have some interest and experience in sales. And I think
Yeah.
trainers who can and want to do both can be very successful. It's just, that's often, to your point, not the way it goes. And so I think,
They're unicorns, no pun intended.
yes.
Again, they're very rare.
Yes, 100%. Well, let's leave it there. This has been such a valuable podcast, Dustin. I mean, you're shared so much wisdom, so many tips. I hope our listeners will go back and re-listen to this episode again and again, because there's so many great details you shared about how they can level up their lead generation. So thank you for that. And listeners, if you want to join us again for that virtual fireside chat with Mark Fisher and Stu Brower, please come join us February 6th. Link is down in the show notes. Hope to see you there. Thanks again, Dustin. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.